first off, thank you all, thank you everyone for coming today. Very, very excited for this conversation. I know that we have a lot to get through, and I have a lot of questions that I want to ask you. So just to start off, I know that this has been a very tumultuous week, I'm sure, for you, especially when the explosive news hit that you are moving on from Outlier. And just to start, I would love to hear what brought that about, why now, and maybe we can just start there.
So in case you haven't heard, I am stepping down from my job as executive director of Outlier Media, and after that I'll transition to a position on the board. There is no easy way to make a decision about leaving something as incredible as what we have built at Outlier. And I hope that everybody understands that this has been years of planning. From the very beginning, Sarah and I were very clear that we would not be the last stewards of this organization, and that we were building to pass it over to new people, to new stewardship, to fresh ideas, and more importantly, to fresh leadership, to people who may, much like Sarah and I, not be chosen to lead, but are certainly skilled and positioned to lead. And so that means that you have to get out of the way maybe a little faster than you want to. I think we often hoard power, we hoard leadership in a way that is unhealthy for the ecosystem, is unhealthy for our organizations, and it also creates a pipeline crisis, particularly on the business side, where it is much harder to recruit people to come into this industry, particularly leaders of color. And I just want to add one important point. And this is my thinking solely. When I think about who are the most isolated news consumers in this city, and also the most disconnected community members, it is Black men. And I have had the overwhelming opportunity and chance to lead this organization, to connect with Black women, to bring in Black women into this organization. But there is something really important about the next executive director of Outlier being a Black man. Beyond the fact that he is incredibly skilled, talented, will do an incredible job, I want the most isolated news consumer to look in this newsroom and see themselves reflected. And they will have that when Orlando Bailey takes the reins on June 3rd.
So I know you mentioned, and I know also when we were talking yesterday in preparation of this conversation, you mentioned the emphasis on power redistribution. And I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit more about why you stepped down and how that will impact the redistribution of power.
We work in an incredibly power-hungry industry. And power works in all sorts of interesting ways. Some of it is good and some of it is useful. Our ability to be able to get the mayor to answer a phone call, to get city council people to talk, that is power used in its best ways. But in its worst ways, it looks like us hoarding all of the opportunities for ourselves. And beyond my thinking about that from a business perspective, I also think about it from the other part that guides me, and that's a spiritual perspective. And it's such a limited belief about yourself. It's a limited belief about community. It's a limited belief about the power of what comes after you. And I'll tell you that in doing this, I've had to die a lot of ego deaths. There were moments when we were in this process that took about a year to get through that I told Sarah, never mind, I'm gonna stay, many times over. And that wasn't about whether or not the next leader, we had not identified that person, but that was really about me being scared to move on. That was me being limited in my idea of what opportunities lie in wait for me outside of Outlier. And that is an energy that drives too much of this industry and too much of the leadership of this industry. Again, it is often more powerful to get out of the way than to stay in the way. And I am trying, and I hope in this transition, we will write clearly enough for people to understand that this was a business strategy. I think people underbelieve us on the business side of our strategy. They don't actually believe that there is strategy there. And I have news for them. That moving out of the way is absolutely a strategy towards our continued success.
So I have one more question just in this thread. I'm interested personally, as you know, I'm a founder of a Black publication, and so I'm just interested because it's a very exhausting, thing to help run an organization. So how did you know the moment that you felt your organization was prepared for you to pass it on?
So I had a set of goals. Shout out to the Media Transformation Challenge, MTC, a program out of Pointer that I did the end of last year, beginning of the year before. I don't know how time works anymore. And in that professional development, one of the things that I was encouraged to do was to write a list of goals to help me decide when it would be time for me to exit. And I wrote those goals on a sheet of paper, and sometime in the middle of last year, I realized that we were heading right towards those goals, that they were happening much sooner than I had imagined. But the other thing that happened in the middle of last year, last April, I'm gonna tell a story. I've told a few people privately, I'm gonna tell it publicly, because I hope to write about it soon enough. April of last year, I was going to speak at South by Southwest. Which is, a big deal for whatever big deal that looks like. And I was excited about it. I was excited about the people I'd be in conversation with, including Amanda Zamora, who's in the house right now. And the day before I was set to leave, I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, panicked, because I thought I was having a heart attack. And I'm not saying that lightly. I genuinely believed I was having a heart attack. And I called a friend, and I'm really bad at asking for help. And so when I called my friend at 5 o'clock in the morning, I probably scared her more than I was scared. And so she comes, she picks me up, she calls a friend of ours who is an ER doctor to sort of get some advice about how to handle this. And that friend advised her to take me to a particular hospital. We get on the freeway, and I realized that I did not feel like I was going to make it. I felt like I was going to die in that car. And I said, you have to get me to the closest hospital. If you know Detroit at all, that closest hospital was Detroit Receiving Hospital. Detroit Receiving Hospital is a trauma hospital. It is the #1 trauma hospital in the country. It is not a hospital that you go to unless you are probably bleeding out of your body. It is not a choice you would make. That is how scared I was that something was happening. And so I get to the hospital, and because it's a trauma hospital, they were pretty calm about the whole thing. I was the only person freaking out. They were like, okay, yeah, and so they take me to the back, and I'm on the bed. The doctor walks in, and he was like, Ms. Fortman, how are you feeling today? What's going on? And I said, I feel like I'm having a heart attack. And then the next words out of my mouth were, but I'm supposed to get on a plane today at 4 o'clock. Do you think I'm going to be able to do it? And he looked at me and he said, we'll see. I was not having a heart attack. I was having a massive panic attack, because I had probably been on the road maybe 90% of the year at that point. I was exhausted. There is a way to solve for that does not require leaders to burn themselves out in that way. And a lot of it is, as a leader, sort of putting some real boundaries around yourself, around your labor, around your personhood, particularly as a Black man, because you are a limited commodity in this industry. And so people are going to want to put you on stages to make their stages look more diverse, to make it seem as if this is an industry that is fulfilling its mission of diversity, even though we know that is not true. And it also means that you are going to have to decide when enough is enough. That is not a position of weakness, it is a position of strength. And I think that we often think that leaving something weakens the thing, and it weakens us. In fact, a year from now, I will be stronger than I have ever been. I will be better than I have ever been. I will be reset and revitalized in ways that will allow me to continue to add resources to this community that I love so much. But if you continue to sit in place and believe that you have some sort of superpower, that you are just able to climb every mountain unstrapped with no protection and keep going, then you'll find yourself at receiving hospital asking, can you take a flight, even though you think you are having a heart attack. I did go speak at that panel, by the way. It was do as I say, not as I do.
So this next question is, as I was researching Outlier and looking at you all's mission and vision, I saw that it stated you work towards a vision of a liberated city with healthy civic infrastructure rooted in Detroiters' participation and self-determination. And so I'm interested in how your perception of what a liberated city and Detroiters having self-determination, how has that understanding shifted over the years, especially maybe in comparing before you all did your groundbreaking 2022 information needs assessment and after you did it?
So, one, I want to shout out the Outlier team who helped write that statement. That was a collaboration in real time. And the word that was there before liberation was equity. And I challenged them to think about if we could go a step further, and if instead of achieving equity, we could work towards liberation. Liberation is hard, as we are witnessing right now in real time globally. It is not something that we do easily, because liberation, talk about giving up power, liberation requires a real, not just sharing of power. That's actually not enough. It means some people who have had outsized power would need to have undersized power. And that, for me, is a more interesting way for me to live inside of this work. Also, Detroiters are wildly self-determined. There is nothing that we are doing at Outlier that Detroiters weren't already doing for themselves. We are just able to go and get more resources. We get to go into the Night Media Forum. We get to have conversations with foundations. That is a privilege. And so our job is to take the privilege of being able to be in those rooms, to have those conversations, and use it to help Detroiters do the work they were already doing. You see that in the power of the Documenters Network, that 500 Detroiters, more than 500 Detroiters, are trained to be documenters. That's because Detroiters know they are the solution to their problems already. But if over time you are continuously told that you are not good enough, strong enough, smart enough, powerful enough, you do start to believe that. It sinks into your psyche, and it becomes a part of how you treat yourself, how you treat others, how you treat your community. And so our job is to, when we first started, we used the language of we want to help Detroiters survive in the city, because we were really doing work that was about the crisis of information. And at some point, we moved to help Detroiters survive and thrive in the city. Because ultimately, what would be best in that time, we just wanted to work ourselves out of a job. We wanted to see Detroiters in the community so strong that what we were doing at our base was no longer necessary, because Detroiters weren't living in constant crisis. But then we realized that there is this other part of the city that always exists, and this is the thing that I'm in love with, and that is the part of the city that thrives in spite of its challenges. And so that part we can always continue to do while working aggressively to eliminate the idea that a community would live, exist, and breathe in constant crisis.
I'm definitely going to get to the collaboration point at some point, but I want to...
If you could not, it would be nice, because I have a lot of feelings about it.
But something that we talk a lot about in our newsroom is liberation and what that even means, because it can be a very nebulous concept that can be defined in a lot of different ways. And so I'm interested from your view, what does a liberated Detroit look like?
There is an incredible exhibit at the Detroit Institute of Arts, and if you have time to go see it before you leave, I hope you do. The artist the artist in the exhibit is Tiff Massey. The exhibit is called 7 Mile to Livernois. 7 Mile is a street in Detroit, as is Livernois. Livernois is the street I was raised off of. When I walked into the exhibit the very first time, last Saturday during the opening, Tiffany is a jewelry maker by design, an incredible jewelry maker. But she also creates jewelry at scale, and I'm talking about large scale. And I walked into that room, and I saw this huge, overwhelming, large piece of art, and I started weeping because I understood that Tiffany saw us. She created a monument to Detroiters that is open and flexible and made to your own description. Every Detroiter that will walk in and see that piece of art will feel something different about this city. I walked in and I felt seen as a Black woman, as a Detroiter, and when I was able to finally talk to her, when I hugged her, my heart burst open. And I said to her, "You saw us. You saw the possibility of us." She did not limit herself. The museum, of course, has lots of limitations they put on artists. She did not allow any of those limitations to deter her from building at the scale she wanted to build at. And so liberation for me feels a lot like that piece of art felt when I looked at it. Wide and like overwhelming, in your face. And I've had a hard time balancing all the pieces of me, right? I have a lot of personality, and I'm funny, and I'm also incredibly smart. And that incredibly smart part I've had a hard time claiming because people want to put me in this box. And for a long time, that's the box I let people put me in. So liberation looks like climbing out of that box into all the pieces of myself and allowing all the pieces of myself to be on display as I seek to put them on display. And allowing my labor, my passion, my love, my heart, to be led, defined, and used only by my own determination.
So this next question is a little bit of a longer question, so bear with me a little bit. Speaking of liberation of self-determination, the life and death consequences of racist and harmful narratives, truly the most courageous, meaningful, and fearless journalism that I'm currently learning from. Of course, in addition to the history of the radical Black press, including Frederick Douglass, Ida B. Wells, Claudia Jones's, is Palestinian journalists who are currently employing journalism as a means of survival, not as a means of a professional endeavor or a career opportunity. It's quite literally a means to resist an ongoing genocide of their people. And so I have, I bring that up because there was this incredibly profound piece published by Al Jazeera earlier this year that you shared on Twitter, and you strongly suggested that your followers read it. It was written by Malik Silmi, who's a Palestinian-American journalist who went to school here at Wayne State. She worked at a local news outlet in Texas and wanted to publish a story on a protest about the occupation and ethnic cleansing of her people, and she describes how after it went through editorial change, it basically got completely stripped of meaning. The sources and voices in the story were completely altered of any pro-Palestinian perspectives. And so when we were kind of discussing this a little bit yesterday, not only were we talking about that, but you also mentioned what you described as the lie of objectivity. And I think I personally have heard of things like the myth of objectivity. I was just very fascinated by the fact you used even stronger language to describe it as the lie of objectivity, and how you believe that coincides into the coverage that we're currently seeing of the genocide as well.
First of all, Malak is an incredible journalist, and any of your newsrooms would be lucky to have her. To not have your humanity recognized is one of the most powerful tools of supremacy. It is one of the most daunting personal realities. to walk into place and know that your lived experience, the things you know to be true, the way something smells, the way something tastes, the way something sounds, for people to tell you, no, they don't taste, sound, and smell that way, can drive a person out of their mind. Because you're in constant conflict with what is in front of your face and what people are telling you you should see to be the truth. I still say everyone should go and read that piece. It was a check for myself as a leader about how do I protect all of the people who work for me, all of their humanity. How do we allow people to bring their full selves to their work? How do we ensure that in conversation, in community, that we are centering everyone's humanity and everyone's lived experience? And so when I say that objectivity is a lie, everyone is coming from some sort of objective viewpoint. I deeply believe that the people of Detroit deserve to live not just at a living wage, above a living wage. I am deeply biased about that point. I am deeply biased that our journalism should make Detroiters' lived experiences better, that they should have more ability to be free in this city. That is a bias. I am coming from a deeply objective viewpoint, and I'm okay with that. Because the way I am choosing, the way Sarah has beautifully built this newsroom and its reporting capacity allows us to be able to have a viewpoint about how the journalism is used in service to people. But so much of the coverage that we're seeing right now, outside of the student journalists on campus, and I want to call that out very particularly, but the reason there's a difference between what the student journalists are doing and what you see, particularly in mainstream media, is that student journalists are doing the very basic tenets of journalism. They're starting by being in community with their sources. They're not being extractive. They're not demanding, which we've seen at worst, that people owe you their stories, their narrative, that they must become your source. No one has to do anything for you. And that idea that people's stories belong to us is part of that power imbalance that I've been talking about throughout this time. Our ability to be in community with people allows us to better see their humanity. It allows us to then write stories that come from a human perspective, not the perspective of governments and people who profiteer from war, but the folks who are on the ground living in the experience of being their most human selves. And so I would hope that there is an analysis done, particularly of the difference between how community journalists, student journalists, independent journalists, compared to mainstream journalists, have been able to hold humanity in their reporting and how others completely lost the plot line.
Thank you for that. Can you maybe talk, now we can finally get to the collaboration piece.
Collaborative Journalism Summit, sure.
Can you maybe, well, first I would just be interested in how you define collaborative journalism and maybe some of the if you can give some of the best examples that you all have seen at your time at Outlier.
So I'm going to start with saying I'm on the business side of this industry. And there is collaboration that also happens on that side that I think is under-discussed and underutilized. One of the most powerful examples of that in my life, and I tell everyone who enters into leadership that they will need this, is the collaborative that I have with the other Black leaders of newsrooms across this country. From Sierra, who recently left Scalawag, to Wendy at MLK 50, Mazen at Documented, Mukhtar at Sahan Journal, Lisa Snowden, who's here from Baltimore Beat, and many, many others. We are in collaboration all the time. We talk constantly. And that scares some people, and it should. We want it to be a bit scary for folks. because we don't want people to think that we are not having conversations to protect ourselves, to protect our staffs, our editorial policies, and also because so much of what makes this job hard as a leader of color is what you don't know, and the rooms you don't get to sit in, the ways of existing in community that are just a bit off from how you might have been raised, how wealth talks. Because wealth has a very different language. And if you have not been raised in that language, you have to learn it. And so as we all go out in our various ways in various communities learning that, we're sharing it with one another. So collaborations are happening all the time, also on the business side, but they need to happen more aggressively. Collaboration that I'm really excited about is the way we run the documenters program. When we brought documenters to Detroit, I was at WDET. So they were the first, WDET is Detroit Public Radio Station in town, and that's where I came from before Outlier. When we brought that program to town, I'm seeing Jerome Vaughn in the back, who's the news director at WDET and everybody's favorite news dad. Jerome might have been one of the only people who believed in the possibility of that program on the editorial side. And so it makes it really hard to get anything published out of it, to get real work pushed out of it. So when Sarah decided that we were going to bring it in and manage it at Outlier, the way that she and Aaron Perry is our managing editor, decided that that would be a collaborative process that involved now 9 newsroom partners across the city, is what makes that network powerful. Because it does not center just the production of one newsroom. It centers the health of many newsrooms, the capacity of many newsrooms. But I will go back to, because I'm on the business side, the next iteration of that is sharing in the cost of making that happen. It is not an inexpensive program, and right now Outlier shares the full cost of running that program. When I know that it is at its true success, it means that all of the newsroom partners involved in that also take a stake in the financial risk of that program. And so those are the sort of collaborations I think are healthiest, because too much of collaboration falls on the least resourced, hardest to resource, often POC-led organizations who have deeper connections to community and with community to go out in front, while more well-known entities get a lot of benefit off of it, while not putting enough investment in it. Also, Joe said we had 10 minutes, like 3 minutes ago.
Cool. Did you want to leave time for questions, or?
I'm scared that no one will have questions. That's always very scary, but sure.
But if you are going to do questions, just come up to one of these mics real quick. We got about 5 minutes left. If we got time for 2 questions, so fight each other if you want to get up to the mic. Go, 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 go.
Oh, right now? Okay, cool. Great. Yeah, Candice. So lovely. Thank you so much. I'm very curious about, if you think back to when you started in this role, what would you say to that version of Candice? What do you want her to know about where you are right now in this moment?
I'm not supposed to say run, right? That's not the answer. Run, girl, run. No. 2 things. You know more than you think you do. When you have been appreciated, undervalued in your labor, again, it goes back to that idea, you start to believe those things about yourself. And so I walked in incredibly unsure of myself, and you could see it and how I was going about the work. It was not until I really started to believe and during the pandemic, I had a whiteboard in my home office that said ambition over lack. When I moved into this idea of that Outlier could be ambitious in its building, in its dreams, and we could be ambitious in our leadership. It really changed my relationship with the work. It also changed literally how we were able to exist. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I could not have known that this partnership would be the thing that prepared me most for every other partnership in my life. What Sarah and I have is unique. It is hard to do. It requires the kind of trust often only saved for marriages, and too often not saved for marriages. It has built me up. It has made me believe in the possibility of everything. I am unlimited now. And it taught me that I don't have to hold it all, that I can hold it in community with equally brilliant, smart, determined human beings who might just change your life. So let me just publicly say, thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
What's next?
Yeah, just really quickly. So when I head off to Stanford, the thing I think I'm going to do, because anybody who's done a JSK fellowship will tell you, you go in with bright ideas and come out realizing that you weren't going to do that, you're going to do something else. But it'll probably be something like this. So the thing that I wrote in my application is about journalism's capacity, whether it even exists, to solve for, address, or even deal with the crisis of isolation and the lack of care that we see in our communities. Very specifically looking at the most isolated news audiences, and how when you are isolated from information, you're also isolated from care, you're isolated from progress, you're isolated from resources. And what is journalism's role in addressing those things? And does journalism even have the capacity to be able to do it? And the reason I say that is because journalism too often is unable to do that in its own house. And if your own house is out of order, and I mean the newsrooms, certainly there is no way that what you build for others will look any better than what you build for the people who work for you. So as I see the mistreatment of reporters and editors in newsrooms across this country, I become more and more reluctant to believe that it's possible, but I also know that there are organizations like the one that I'm about to lead that probably have the capacity to be able to do it.
Any last questions at all? One more? Were you gonna ask? Oh, okay.
Okay, well, then I can say one more thing. I just want to call something else out. Deborah Douglas is here. Yesterday at Third Man, I looked up and I saw her. Deborah saw that I was giving the keynote address today, got on a plane last night, and was here. That is a collaboration. That is community. That is the thing that has sustained my capacity to do this work, have been women like Deborah. So thank you.
Well, I just want to lastly say thank you for the example that you have set. When I came into this industry, I didn't even like to be called a journalist, and I still even question using that word as a part of my identity. But seeing especially black people, black women like you who are fearless and setting great examples, it just makes it a lot easier for people coming up next. So I just wanted to say thank you.